Bonjour, here we are in the first grammar lesson of chapter 7. And we see Claire who's saying into the phone, Je t'appellerai demain, d'accord? And Abia, d'accord. J'ai hâte que tu me racontes tout. Now we see a T apostrophe, because appellerai begins with a vowel. And we see a tu me racontes, me. Which of these two is direct and which is indirect? The answer to this is based on knowledge of the verbs. They're each objects coming before a verb, as is the order when you replace an object and you put in the direct or now indirect object. Je t'appellerai, tu me racontes. But if you know the verbs well, you know that when you say appeler, you say appeler quelqu'un, call someone. Appeler quelqu'un. So, appellerai is going to have a direct object. Raconter à quelqu'un. Raconter à. When you tell, raconter is kind of like to tell someone. Literally you see the word conte. Conter, like a short story. Raconter is to retell the story. Raconter à quelqu'un, that's indirect. Me raconte tout. If you were to draw it out, it would be raconte à moi. If you draw out appeler, quelqu'un. So the difference between a direct and indirect is first and foremost based on the verb itself. And this book gives you a good list of verbs. Verbs that always have an indirect object. Demander à. Téléphoner à isn't in there, but that's an important one to always have in your mind when you're thinking. On peut appeler quelqu'un, on peut téléphoner à quelqu'un. If you call someone, appeler quelqu'un, that's direct. If you use the verb téléphoner, which is like a synonym, téléphoner à quelqu'un, that's indirect. Demander à, to ask. In French, the à is built in. Demander à. Donner à, to give to someone. Now there are times where the English seems to mirror the French. It's easy to express donner à with the English, to give to. But remember, there's verbs like regarder, to look at. We want to give that a preposition because regarder means watch, but it also means to look at. In French, regarder quelqu'un is a direct object. Same with écouter, to listen to. In French, it's écouter la radio. Écouter ses parents. Je les écoute. It's not like the English wants to do. Écouter, we want to say to listen to. Écrire à, to write to. Envoyer à, to send to. Montrer à, poser une question à, prêter à, vendre à. This is a good list to start with. There's also verbs that parler à, téléphoner à, répondre à. These verbs are always used with indirect objects. So there's a slight difference. You don't see it with me and te. As we began this lesson, I was saying, guess which one is direct and which one is indirect. With me, for me, or te, you, or nous, or vous, the indirect and direct object look the same. You have to know which is which based on your knowledge of verbs. But when you're talking about the third person, singular and plural pronouns, there's a big difference. One of them is that you only have lui and leur. You don't have a le or a la. You don't have a masculine or a feminine. It's either lui, and that could be him or her, or leur. Also, with the indirect object, it can only be a person. On parle à quelqu'un. On parle à Jacques. Je lui parle. On parle à Jacques et Martine. On leur parle. Guy donne des bonbons à ses amis. Guy leur donne des bonbons. Karim parle à son patron. Il lui parle. Je donne mon CV à la secrétaire. Je lui donne mon CV. Je donne mon CV. Je le donne. Now with the direct object, it can be je donne what. But with the indirect object, it's always to whom or for whom. It's always a person. And this is going to come up again and again, as we also see that sometimes when you're talking about, for example, répondre à, if it's répondre à Jacques, je lui réponds. But if it's répondre à la question, it'll not be lui. It'll be j'y réponds. And that's another pronoun that we'll be getting to in this chapter. But for now, I'd like you to hone in your ability to use the indirect lui, leur, and to also get a sense of the difference between direct and indirect.